Let's go. Okay, so today I woke up this morning, I got a text from my homie, and he said the Lakers traded away Danny Green, time to celebrate. So I didn't even find out early that they traded for Dennis Schröder. My homie was just happy they got rid of Danny Green, but we got Dennis fucking Schröder. So in this trade, the Lakers are giving away Danny Green and their number 28 pick of this year's draft for Dennis Schröder. So yeah, let's break it down on both sides. On the Lakers end, they're getting Dennis. In my opinion, he was the 6th man of the year this year instead of who won it, Montrezl Harrell. I think Dennis Schröder definitely deserves 6th man of the year, but whatever. He's a great scoring point guard. He gave 20 points per game off the bench for most of the year, and that's kind of exactly what the Lakers needed, a consistent third scoring option. And he's relatively young. It's not like he's out of his prime. He is in the smack dead middle of his prime. He's about 27 or 28 years old. Even though he is a score first point guard, he's definitely improved as a facilitator over his time in the NBA. This year he averaged what did he average this year? He averaged 4 assists this year, which is pretty good for somebody who's considered a score first point guard. So I'm not worried with that at all, and plus he's playing with LeBron, so he doesn't really have to focus on facilitation that much. He can either come off the bench or start for this Lakers team. Either would be fine with me. I mean, we'll see what Frank Vogel wants to do since he is a defensive minded head coach, so he might just want to roll 2 defensive players in the backcourt around LeBron and AD. I would be perfectly fine with him in the starting lineup. I think you can build a good defensive rotation around Dennis Schröder at the point guard position because the Lakers have a plethora of defensive wings in KCP, Caruso, Taylor Horton-Tucker has defensive potential off the bench, Avery Bradley, but I wouldn't start Avery Bradley next to Dennis Schröder because that would be a really small backcourt because Avery Bradley is like 6'3" and Dennis Schröder is 6'1" or 6'2". So if we were to start Dennis Schröder, I would start him with KCP. But like I said, either one, him coming off the bench or starting would be fine with me. I think the Lakers could figure it out. If he were to come off the bench, I think Dennis Schröder would definitely be a part of the closing lineups for the Lakers when it's a 5-point game with 4 minutes left in the fourth. Dennis Schröder will definitely be in the lineup because he's that lethal on the offensive end. And I guess the really big important part of this trade is that the Lakers get a consistent third scoring option while also retaining cap space and cap flexibility for the 2021 offseason because Dennis Schröder is on a 1-year deal. So if the Lakers find out that they want to go after one of the big fish in the 2021 free agency market, they can have that cap space because Dennis Schröder will be an expiring, and if they swing and miss on a big fish in that 2021 free agency market, they can just bring back Dennis Schröder because he's a good player to have next to AD. He's I think he's the exact same age as AD. He's not exiting his prime. He's in the smack dead center of his prime. That's another reason why this is a dub of a trade for the Lakers. If we look at what they're losing Danny Green. They're losing a defensive wing. He's not a 3-and-D wing anymore, and that 3-point shot just isn't as consistent as it used to be. So yeah, they do lose a defensive wing. Kind of hurts their defensive wing depth. But like I said, they have good backups in terms of Taylor Horton-Tucker, KCP, Avery Bradley, Caruso. They're all great or good defenders on the perimeter. And they're losing the draft pick they have this year. They already don't have a lot of their draft picks going forward, so losing this one kind of hurts because the Lakers need to get younger sooner rather than later. But that's the sacrifice you have to make when you're trying to win now with LeBron James. They have a small championship window, so they gotta go all in. If we look at it from the Thunder side of things, I low-key thought Dennis Schröder would be a bit more valuable than CP3 on the trade market for them because we know they're selling. They're going to trade CP3 eventually. They're probably going to sign and trade Danilo Gallinari. They just traded away Schröder. They're probably going to trade away Steven Adams. But I thought Schröder would hold a bit more value than CP3 because he's younger, in the prime of his career, no real injury risk, and he's on a 1-year deal, and it's a tradable contract. When you compare that to CP3, who's making $40 million per year, he's an injury risk. Even though he's really good this year, you kind of fear him getting older and him exiting the prime of his career. So I'm kind of surprised that this was the value that the OKC Thunder settled on. And I didn't really expect Dennis Schröder to get traded this early on. I thought he'd get traded a bit more during the middle of free agency or right before the season, but this is what the Thunder decided on. They're getting Danny Green back, which will be whatever. He's an expiring deal, so they don't got to worry about paying him in the future. It's not like OKC is going to be a free agency destination, but yeah, that pickup is whatever, but they're getting an additional first round pick. It's going to be 28, so OKC just continuing to stockpile on draft picks. In this draft, they're going to have 25 and 28, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do here. Do they try to go with experienced players who played a couple years in college? Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of players like that in this draft. I think Desmond Bane is one of those players. My guy from SDSU, Malachi Flynn, is one of those players. I think he's a junior. Tyler Bay from Colorado, he's a junior. Anybody else? I said Desmond Bane. So yeah, those are the type of players that if they want to go the experienced college player route at the end of the first round, those are the type of players they could go for. Or if they want to go for the more project player, high risk, high reward type of prospects route, they could go with Jaden McDaniels, who was one of the top players coming out of high school. He went to Washington. I don't think he had a great year there, but he was definitely one of the highly touted players out of high school. I think he'll be a project player in the NBA, so Jaden McDaniels fits that kind of profile. And then there's Alexis Popovich. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Kind of another like tall European demigod coming from overseas that you would have to develop. You would have to commit a lot of your resources into his player development. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of route OKC goes with towards the end of the draft, because they have 28 and 25. To close out this vid, I didn't expect Schröder to get traded so soon. I really felt like he was going to be the player of this kind of win now veteran core of the Thunder of Schröder, Gallinari, Adams, and Chris Paul. I felt like Schröder was going to be the player who would get you the most value. But I mean, I guess it makes sense because Schröder's on a 1-year deal. It might be a 1-year rental if you're trading for him, so maybe that would be the reason you wouldn't get maybe an earlier draft pick like I originally thought he would net you. I guess it's fine, because at the end of the day, it's another draft pick. The Thunder have an additional shot of getting a steal in the draft. Like they're gonna have all these chances of getting steals in the draft over the next 4 or 5 years, because they have multiple draft picks in multiple draft classes. So this just gives the Thunder another chance to hit a home run in the draft. So that's how I view it on the Thunder's end. I think we can expect more trades to come in the future with Gallinari, Steven Adams, CP3. So we'll be on the lookout for those trades. But on the Lakers end of it, W of a trade. Me looking at it from a Laker fan perspective, me looking at it from just an NBA fan's perspective, it's a W of a trade on both viewpoints, because they get a bona fide third scoring option, which has been the criticism of the Lakers the entire regular season last year, and of them going into the offseason this year. Even though they proved that they didn't need a consistent third scoring option to win the championship, that third guy kind of fluctuated. Some nights it was Kuzma, some nights it was KCP, some nights it was Rondo, some nights it was Danny Green going off from downtown. So they proved that they didn't need the third scoring option to win the championship this year. But I think especially with the Western Conference getting a bit better, teams like the Warriors coming back to full health, the Nuggets are a bit older, more playoff experienced, playoff ready. They're going to be an issue. You know, the Clippers are going to go all in this year. I think they're really going to need that consistent third scoring option, and getting that in Dennis Schröder, a guy that can come off the bench or start for you, I think that's a dub. And then I think the more important part of this trade is they're getting that guy while being able to retain flexibility for the 2021 offseason to really land that bona fide superstar player to pair with AD for the next 5 years, if they want to go down that route. If I had to put a grade on this trade from the Lakers end of it, I give it a B+ or an A-. I guess my bias will give it an A- for the Lakers, and then for the Thunder, I'll give it a B-. All I can say is, as a Lakers fan, this was fantastic news to wake up to.